The clock's cold hands had just swept past midnight, marking the eerie silence of a seemingly ordinary night. I was lost in the digital abyss of my phone, ensconced in the deceptive comfort of our living room, when the unmistakable rumble of a car shattered the quiet. It had to be her. Amy, my wife, was finally back after 3 days on a business trip, a routine occurrence in her demanding career. Yet a subtle disquiet gnawed at me. Her texts, usually perfunctory, had been unusually, almost unnervingly cheerful this time. The front door creaked open, and there she stood, silhouetted against the dim porch light. Her suitcase in one hand, her phone still clutched in the other, a radiant smile illuminated her face, a joy I hadn't witnessed in what felt like an eternity. Laughter bubbled from her, a light, carefree sound, undoubtedly at some private joke or message on her screen. For a fleeting moment, I almost convinced myself. Perhaps the trip had been exceptionally fruitful, a triumph at work, some long-awaited good news. A faint smile touched my lips, genuinely pleased to see her so vibrant. "Hey, honey!" Her voice, effervescent, danced in the air. She kicked off her heels, dropping her suitcase by the door. "You won't believe the chaos of this trip. Endless meetings, but we absolutely crushed the presentation. It's going to be monumental for the company." I offered a small, knowing nod. "That's fantastic, Amy. Sounds like it was a resounding success." "It was," she chirped, still beaming as she pulled out her phone and began tapping away. "Oh, and the food at that place they took us to? Unreal. Michelin star unreal." My gaze lingered on her as she prattled on, captivated by the almost ethereal glow emanating from her. Something was undeniably different, an energy almost too effusive to grasp. And then there was that laugh, a string of girlish giggles directed at her phone, a carefree mirth I hadn't heard from her in years. A sudden sharp pang of jealousy pierced me, not because she was happy, but because I hadn't been the architect of that unbridled joy. I rose, moving towards her, and offered a light embrace. "You seem incredibly happy," I remarked, a half jest in my tone. "Perhaps I should send you on more business trips." She laughed again, but this time a nervous edge crept into the sound. "Yeah, maybe," she said, pulling away to retrieve her suitcase. "I'm just going to unpack really quickly." As she vanished into our bedroom, a profound unease settled within me. Was it the way her eyes darted away, avoiding mine, or the way she clutched her phone like a forbidden secret? Whatever it was, the feeling persisted. There was more to her exhilaration than a mere successful business trip. Left alone in the living room, I stared at the empty doorway, a growing chill creeping up my spine. Her laughter had ceased. The house had fallen into an unsettling, almost deafening quiet. Curiosity, a relentless serpent, coiled in my gut, compelling me towards the bedroom. My footsteps were muffled, swallowed by the carpet. As I reached the threshold, a hushed whisper reached my ears. "No, no, no!" she murmured, her voice laced with panic. "This can't be happening. Not now." I peered inside, witnessing a scene that twisted my stomach. She sat on the edge of the bed, her suitcase agape, holding a piece of paper. Her face, moments ago radiant, was now deathly pale, her earlier smile annihilated, replaced by an expression of stark terror. Her hands trembled violently as she stared at whatever discovery she had unearthed from her bag. "What's wrong?" I asked, stepping into the room. She jolted, shoving the paper back into the suitcase with frantic speed. "Nothing," she forced out, a brittle laugh that belied the fear in her eyes. "Just, work stuff." I raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. Work stuff. You look like you've seen a ghost. She shook her head, closing the suitcase with a sharp, echoing snap. I'm fine, she insisted, brushing past me. I'm just tired. I'll tell you about it tomorrow, okay? Before I could utter another word, she was gone, the bathroom door slamming shut behind her, leaving me adrift in a sea of confusion and burgeoning suspicion. Something was terribly amiss. My gut screamed that she was concealing a profound secret, and I knew with an unsettling certainty that I wouldn't find peace until I unearthed it. So I did the unthinkable. I waited until the gentle hiss of the shower began, then with a heavy heart, I unzipped her suitcase. What lay within sent an icy tendril of dread coiling through my veins. I hesitated, my gaze fixed on the suitcase as if it were Pandora's box itself. My heart hammered against my ribs, my hands clammy with anticipation, yet an irresistible force propelled me forward. I had to know what she was so desperate to hide. Slowly I unzipped the bag, lifting the lid. At first glance it appeared innocuous, clothes, toiletries, a few folded papers. But as I delved deeper, my stomach lurched. Beneath a layer of clothes lay a neatly wrapped gift box tied with a crimson ribbon. It wasn't addressed to me. In fact, it bore no name at all. Yet its size and shape ignited an immediate gnawing unease. It felt too personal, too intimate. With trembling hands, I opened it. Inside, nestled within the folds, was a sleek black lingerie set, far more provocative than anything she had ever worn for me. A torrent of questions flooded my mind. Why would she pack this for a business trip? More agonizingly, why was I completely unaware of its existence? Then I noticed a small card tucked into the fabric. My heart plummeted as I recognized her distinctive handwriting scrawled across it. For when we're finally alone. My chest tightened, a wave of nausea washing over me. There was no denying it now. This wasn't some innocent oversight. This was irrefutable evidence. Proof that my wife had been living a lie. I sank onto the edge of the bed, clutching the card, a thousand possibilities swirling in my mind. Who was we? A colleague from her office? Someone she'd just met on this trip? I craved answers, but I knew a direct confrontation would be futile. She would simply deny everything. I needed to be strategic. Carefully, I replaced everything precisely as I had found it, zipping the suitcase shut and returning it to its original spot. Then I retrieved my phone, my hands shaking so violently I could barely type, and opened the browser. My desperate search for unusual activity led me to our shared phone account. What I discovered only deepened the chasm of dread in my stomach. Her call log was riddled with unfamiliar numbers, many with alarmingly long durations. One number in particular screamed for attention. It had been called every single day of her trip, sometimes multiple times. My pulse quickened as I copied the number into a reverse lookup site. The result appeared almost instantly: Ethan Reynolds. The name meant nothing to me, but the implication was devastatingly clear. Whoever this man was, he had been a significant, intimate part of her business trip. I stared at the name, struggling to comprehend. A coworker I'd never heard of? A client, perhaps? Or something far, far worse. I resisted the urge to leap to conclusions, yet the evidence was piling up, a relentless, damning tide. The bathroom door creaked open, jolting me back to reality. Amy emerged, her hair damp, her face scrubbed clean of makeup. Her eyes held a peculiar mix of guilt and caution, as if she could sense the nascent suspicion within me. "You okay?" she asked, her voice a little too casual. You look pale. I forced a smile, a brittle facade. Yeah, I'm fine. Just tired. She nodded, but her gaze lingered, a silent question in her eyes, before she climbed into bed, pulling the covers to her chin as if nothing had transpired. I lay beside her, staring at the ceiling, my mind a maelstrom of possibilities. Sleep was an impossible luxury that night. Every time I closed my eyes, the card, the lingerie, and the name, Ethan Reynolds, seared themselves into my vision. I knew I had to dig deeper, but I also knew with chilling clarity that I couldn't let her suspect, not yet. As the first faint light of dawn filtered through the curtains, a cold, hard resolve solidified within me. I was going to unearth the truth, no matter how excruciating it proved to be. I grabbed my phone, my fingers flying across the screen, making plans. If she believed she could keep this secret from me, she was in for a rude awakening. The following morning, I adopted an air of disarming calm. I couldn't risk revealing my hand, not until every piece of the agonizing puzzle clicked into place. Amy awoke as if the previous night's panicked whispers were a figment of my imagination, humming a cheerful tune as she brewed coffee in the kitchen. Watching her, one would assume she hadn't a single care in the world, yet the memory of her terror-stricken face remained etched in my mind, a chilling specter. Over breakfast, I cast my line, baiting her gently. "So, any exciting stories from the trip?" I asked, feigning casual interest, sipping my coffee. She froze for a barely perceptible fraction of a second before flashing her usual practice smile. "Not really," she shrugged. "Mostly just work stuff. Meetings, presentations, the usual. Nothing fun." I nodded, pretending to accept her words as truth. Must have been exhausting. "It was," she conceded, glancing at her phone. "But it was worth it. The client loved our pitch, and we might even close the deal next week." Her response was seamless, almost too perfect. I knew she was lying, but I held my tongue, focusing instead on my unwavering plan. I needed more evidence, and for that I needed access to her phone. After breakfast, she headed to the shower, leaving her phone carelessly discarded on the kitchen counter. My heart pounded as I seized it, my fingers trembling. Her passcode, ironically, was still our wedding date. I swiftly navigated to her messages. There it was, a string of texts between her and Ethan Reynolds. My stomach churned with a sickening lurch as I read them. "Amy, I can't stop thinking about this weekend. It was perfect. Ethan, you were perfect. I miss you already. Amy, me too. I hate sneaking around, but it's worth it. I—" The air felt sucked from the room. The messages were undeniably explicit, leaving no room for doubt about what had transpired on her so-called business trip. My chest tightened further as I scrolled, finding photos she'd sent him. Selfies in a hotel room, her adorned in that same black lingerie. I couldn't bear to look any longer. I locked the phone, replacing it precisely where I'd found it. When she emerged from the shower, I feigned ignorance, an Oscar-worthy performance of normalcy. "I'm heading out for a bit," I announced, grabbing my keys. "Need to run some errands." "Okay," she said, barely looking up from her phone. "See you later." As I drove away, a tempest of anger, heartbreak, and grim determination raged within me. I wasn't the kind of man to let such a profound betrayal slide, but neither was I impulsive. I needed a methodical approach, a plan to ensure my confrontation was unassailable. I pulled into a deserted parking lot and made the call I never imagined I'd make, to a private investigator. Jack, the investigator, listened patiently as I recounted my agonizing tale, I'll take the case, he stated, his voice calm and professional. I'll need her schedule, any details about this guy, and access to anything you can provide. Emails, phone logs, social media. I gave him everything, including the damning messages I'd just witnessed. Jack assured me he would begin digging immediately and promised to keep me updated. As I hung up, a small, fragile sense of relief settled over me. At least now I was acting. Over the next few days, I maintained my charade, pretending everything was normal. I laughed at Amy's jokes, listened to her fabricated stories, and even kissed her goodnight, all while the crushing weight of what I knew threatened to suffocate me. It was the hardest performance of my life, but I clung to the mantra that the truth, no matter how painful, was worth the wait. Then one evening, Jack's call came. "We've got something," he said, his tone grim. "You're going to want to see this." Jack's call had left me teetering on the precipice of a breakdown. He hadn't elaborated, simply stated he had something I needed to see and insisted on an in-person meeting that very night. As Amy sat on the couch, mindlessly scrolling through her phone, I couldn't tear my gaze from her, a burning question searing my thoughts. How could she sit there, so utterly composed, while harboring such a monumental betrayal? Every smile she offered, every casual remark, felt like a fresh twist of the knife. Yet I continued my elaborate charade, pretending tranquility, even as the storm within me swelled, threatening to erupt. The next morning, armed with a fabricated excuse about a last-minute work meeting, I headed to a small diner on the outskirts of town to meet Jack. He was already there, a manila folder resting ominously on the table before him. My heart hammered against my ribs as I slid into the booth opposite him. "You're not going to like this," Jack said, his voice low and serious. He pushed the folder towards me, his expression grim. "But you need to see it." With trembling hands, I opened the folder. The first thing I saw was a series of photos, grainy but undeniably clear. There was Amy, undeniably Amy, laughing, leaning intimately into the man I now recognized, Ethan Reynolds. They were seated at what appeared to be a hotel bar, their body language screaming intimacy. One photo showed Ethan's hand resting on her thigh. Another depicted them holding hands as they entered a hotel elevator. My stomach churned, but the worst was yet to come. Jack pointed to a USB drive tucked inside the folder. "There's more on here," he stated. "Surveillance footage from the hotel. It confirms everything." I couldn't bring myself to watch it. Not there, not in the middle of a diner. The photos alone were enough to make my blood run cold. "How long has this been going on?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "From what I've gathered, at least a few months," Jack revealed. "They've been meeting up whenever she travels for work. This wasn't a one-time thing." The floor beneath me seemed to vanish. Months. She had been lying to me for months, sneaking around with this man while I remained home, trusting her, loving her. The betrayal was a tidal wave, overwhelming, but I forced myself to maintain a fragile composure. I needed to think clearly. "What else did you find?" I asked. Jack hesitated. "There's one more thing," he said, pulling out a printed document from the folder. "It's a booking confirmation for a weekend getaway. She and Ethan have another trip planned in 2 weeks. Looks like they're heading to a resort in Miami." My hands clenched into fists as I stared at the paper. She wasn't even attempting to stop. She was already planning their next illicit rendezvous. The sheer audacity of it ignited a simmering rage within me, but I swallowed it down. If I was going to confront her, it would be on my terms. I would ensure there was no escape, no denial. Thank you, Jack, I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging within. You've done more than enough. He nodded, offering a look of profound sympathy. If you need anything else, just call. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry you're going through this. I left the diner, the folder and USB drive clutched beneath my arm, feeling as though I carried the weight of the world. Yet a strange, grim clarity had settled over me. This was no longer about suspicion or guesswork. I possessed the truth, cold and undeniable. And now the daunting task of deciding what to do with it loomed. That evening I sat in my car in a deserted parking lot, the USB drive a cold weight in my hand. I knew I had to watch the footage, but a part of me was terrified of the inevitable pain it would inflict. Still, I couldn't look away. I plugged the drive into my laptop and opened the files. The videos were meticulously time-stamped, arranged in chronological order, a chilling narrative. The first clip showed Amy and Ethan meeting in the hotel lobby, their faces illuminated with an unsettling recognition. The next, them at the bar, laughing and talking with the ease of a couple on their honeymoon. And then the elevator footage, a few agonizing seconds of them kissing, their lips locked, before the doors closed, sealing their secret. My chest tightened, a vice-like grip as I skipped to the final clip, revealing them entering a hotel room together. The timestamp confirmed it was late at night. They didn't emerge until morning. I closed the laptop, leaning back in my seat, feeling as though I'd been punched in the gut. The evidence was overwhelming, yet it also instilled a strange, unsettling sense of power. For the first time in days, I felt like I held the upper hand. She believed she could keep this hidden, but now I had everything needed to expose the brutal truth. Confrontation alone wouldn't suffice. I wanted her to feel the crushing weight of her actions, but I wanted to deliver it in a way that left no room for excuses, no possibility of denial. She had lied to me. I thought you mentioned something about Miami a few weeks ago. My words hung in the air, deceptively casual. Her reaction was priceless. Her hand tightened around her mug, and for a fleeting moment she looked like a deer caught in the blinding glare of headlights. "Oh, that's not confirmed yet," she stammered, her voice a fragile tremor. "I'll let you know if it happens." "Cool," I said, forcing a brittle smile. "Let me know. Maybe I'll come with you this time." Her nervous, almost choked laugh told me everything I needed to know. Over the next few days, I maintained my poker face, a mask of normalcy, while silently orchestrating the inevitable confrontation. I meticulously backed up all the damning evidence, the photos, the texts, the videos, storing them on multiple devices. I even printed out a few key screenshots just in case. This wouldn't be a screaming match. I wanted cold, undeniable proof that would leave her no room to squirm, no escape from the truth. Then came the perfect opportunity. One evening, as she scrolled through her phone on the couch, I casually resurrected an old memory. "Hey, remember when we used to watch those true crime shows together?" I asked, keeping my tone light, almost nostalgic. She glanced up, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Yeah, those were fun. Why?" "I was thinking we should watch something like that again, you know," I continued, my gaze fixed on her. "See how people unravel mysteries, expose secrets." I let the words hang in the air, watching her reaction. Her smile faltered slightly and she shifted uncomfortably. "Sure, maybe sometime," she said, her voice tight, a subtle tremor in its depths. That was the final critical piece of the puzzle. I had planted enough doubt to sow the seeds of unease. Now it was time to yank the rug from beneath her feet. The following night, the stage was set. I invited her to sit with me in the living room, informing her I needed to have a serious talk. She looked curious but not overly concerned. She had no inkling of the impending storm. As she settled onto the couch, I placed the manila folder on the coffee table between us. Her eyes darted to it, and I caught the faintest flicker of panic in their depths. "What's that?" she asked, her voice a barely audible tremor. "Something I need to show you," I said, my tone calm but laced with an undeniable undercurrent of steel. "But first, I need to ask you something. Is there anything you want to tell me, Amy? Anything at all?" She froze, her face draining of all color. "What do you mean?" "You know exactly what I mean," I stated, my voice firm yet controlled. "I'm giving you one chance to be honest with me. If there's something you've been hiding, now's the time to come clean." Her lips parted, but no words emerged. She looked like she was desperately trying to conjure an excuse, but her mind was a terrifying blank. When she remained silent, I opened the folder and slid the photos across the table. "These are from your business trip," I said, my voice now colder than ice. "Recognize them." Her eyes widened in horror as she stared at the damning pictures, her hands trembling uncontrollably. "I can explain," she stammered, a desperate plea in her voice. "Oh, I'm sure you can," I interjected, cutting her off, my voice sharp as a razor. "But before you do, perhaps you'd like to see this." I pulled out my laptop and pressed play, the elevator footage flickering to life, the color completely drained from her face. "It's not what it looks like," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "It's exactly what it looks like," I snapped, my composure finally shattering. "You lied to me, you betrayed me, and you thought you could get away with it." She opened her mouth to speak, but I wasn't finished. "I know about Ethan. I know about Miami. I know everything, Amy. So tell me, how long were you planning to keep this up? Were you just waiting for me to find out?" Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt not the slightest pang of pity. This wasn't a moment for sympathy. This was the agonizing moment she had to face the brutal consequences of her actions. Amy sat frozen, transfixed by the damning evidence spread before her. The tears in her eyes finally overflowed, but I remained unmoved. This was not the time for crocodile tears. I craved the unvarnished truth, raw and unfiltered, devoid of excuses. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice cracking. "It just happened." I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. "It just happened? That's the best you've got, Amy. Affairs don't just happen. You made deliberate choices. You lied to me, planned trips, snuck around. Don't insult me by pretending this was some accident." She looked down at her hands, wringing them together as if that might somehow erase the crushing weight of her transgressions. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she mumbled, a pathetic plea. "Go this far," I repeated, my voice rising in incredulity. "You've been sneaking around with this guy for months, and you're already planning another trip to Miami with him. How far were you planning to take this? Were you going to run off with him? Leave me behind like yesterday's trash?" She shook her head frantically, her voice rising in desperation. "No, I swear I wasn't going to leave you. You just what?" I interrupted, slamming my hand on the table. "Wanted a little excitement? Something different? Was I not enough for you?" Her silence was deafening, A crushing answer in itself. She couldn't even meet my gaze, and that more than anything confirmed the truth I already knew. For a long, agonizing moment, neither of us spoke. The crushing weight of everything hung heavy in the air, suffocating. Finally, she broke the silence. "I never stopped loving you," she said, her voice barely audible. I let out a bitter, derisive laugh. "You don't do this to someone you love, Amy. You don't lie to their face, betray their trust, and sneak off to hotels with someone else if you love them. So spare me that line because I'm not buying it." Her tears came harder now, and she buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "I don't know why I did it," she choked out. "I was stupid, selfish. I wasn't thinking." "That much is clear," I said coldly. "But now it's time to think, Amy, because this isn't going to end with you crying and me forgiving you. There are consequences for what you've done." She looked up at me, panic flashing in her tear-streaked eyes. What do you mean?" "I mean this," I said, pulling out the stack of printed screenshots and dropping them onto the table with a resounding thud. "This is going to our lawyer. I'm filing for divorce." Her jaw dropped, and for a moment she looked as though she couldn't comprehend my words. "Wait, no!" she cried, reaching for my hand. "We can work through this. Please, just give me a chance to make it right." I pulled my hand away, shaking my head. "You don't get to make it right after months of lying and cheating, Amy. You've destroyed any chance we had of working through this. I can't trust you anymore, and without trust, there's nothing left." Her sobs grew louder, but I refused to let myself feel guilty. This was her mess, her betrayal, and she needed to face the inevitable fallout. I stood up, gathering the folder and laptop. "I'll be staying at a hotel tonight," I said, my voice firm. "I need space to figure out my next steps. You can stay here, but don't expect things to go back to normal. This is the beginning of the end, Amy." As I turned to leave, she called after me, her voice cracking, pleading. "Please don't do this. I'll do anything, anything. Just don't leave." I paused at the door, glancing back at her one last time. The sight of her, broken and desperate, should have stung, but all I felt was a profound numbness. "You already left," I said quietly, my voice devoid of emotion, "the moment you chose him over me." And with that, I walked out, closing the door behind me, sealing the fate of our fractured life. I drove aimlessly for hours, the turbulent storm of emotions raging within me, anger, betrayal, heartbreak. I had never envisioned my life culminating in this agonizing moment, blindsided by the one person I had trusted above all others. Amy's desperate pleas still echoed in my mind, yet they only fueled my rage. She hadn't cared about me. She cared only about being caught. Eventually, I pulled into the desolate parking lot of a small roadside motel. It was cheap, dingy, and precisely what I needed. A place to be alone, far from her. I checked in and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the damning folder I had brought with me. I opened it again, flipping through the evidence, every photo, every message, every minute detail, each solidifying my decision. There was no turning back. Amy had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. The next morning, I called a divorce attorney named Alan, highly recommended by a coworker. I recounted everything: Amy, the affair, the irrefutable evidence. He listened without judgment, then meticulously laid out my options. "With the proof you've got, this could be straightforward," Alan said, his voice calm and steady. "But it depends on what you want out of this. Are you looking for a clean break or something more?" I pondered for a moment. A part of me craved revenge to inflict the same searing pain she had caused me. Yet another part simply yearned for it to be over. I want a clean break, I finally stated, my voice firm. But I won't let her walk away unscathed. She has to take responsibility for what she's done. Alan nodded. Fair enough. We'll start drafting the papers today. Do you have a place to stay for now? Yeah, I replied, though the motel hardly felt like a place to call home. I'll manage. After hanging up, a strange, fragile sense of relief washed over me. For the first time in days, I had a plan. I wasn't merely wallowing in misery, I was taking decisive action. Later that day, Jack called again. There's something you should know, he said, his tone serious. Ethan's wife found out about the affair. I blinked, caught off guard. He's married? Yep, Jack confirmed. And his wife isn't taking it well. She's threatening to go public if Amy doesn't back off. A bitter, hollow laugh escaped me. The irony was almost too much to bear. Amy wasn't just destroying our marriage. She was wreaking havoc on someone else's life, too. Let her go public, I said, a grim satisfaction settling in. Maybe Amy needs to feel what it's like to have her world crumble around her. The ensuing days were a whirlwind, but not in the way I had anticipated. Alan moved swiftly with the divorce papers, and I ensured everything was meticulously prepared. Amy, meanwhile, seemed a mere shadow of her former self. Her confident, bubbly demeanor had evaporated, replaced by a quiet, desperate sadness. She attempted to apologize again, but I held firm. I can't do this anymore, Amy, I told her during one of our last conversations. I deserve better. You made your choices, and now you have to live with them. I'm done being your safety net. Her tears no longer affected me. I had spent too many sleepless nights mourning the life I believed we had, but now I was ready to release it. The divorce process was surprisingly smooth. With the irrefutable evidence I possessed, Amy didn't fight me on anything. We split our assets fairly, and I walked away with the house. Ethan's wife, as it turned out, did indeed go public with the affair, and the fallout was brutal for both Amy and Ethan. But that was no longer my concern. What surprised me most, though, was the profound sense of liberation I felt as I let go of the anger and betrayal. I realized I had spent years trapped in a relationship that was far from the solid foundation I had once believed it to be. Losing Amy wasn't the end of my world. It was unequivocally a new beginning. I threw myself into rebuilding my life, reconnecting with old friends, picking up long-neglected hobbies, and for the first time in years, focusing on my own happiness. It wasn't easy, moments of pain still crept in, but those moments grew fewer and farther between. One evening, a few months later, I found myself in a coffee shop, engrossed in a book, savoring the quiet solitude. That's when I met Rachel. She was at the table next to mine, struggling to balance her coffee cup and laptop, a comical display of clumsiness. "Need a hand?" I asked, a genuine smile touching my lips. She laughed, her eyes sparkling. "Thanks. I swear I'm usually more coordinated than this." We started talking, and before I knew it, hours had vanished. Rachel was kind, funny, and effortlessly easy to talk to. For the first time in what felt like forever, a spark of hope ignited within me. As we exchanged numbers and bid farewell that evening, a profound realization dawned on me. I wasn't broken anymore. Amy's betrayal had hurt, yes, but it hadn't destroyed me. I was stronger now, more confident in who I was and what I truly desired from life. Moving on didn't mean forgetting what had transpired. It meant choosing to focus on the future instead of being chained to the past. And as I walked out of that coffee shop, I felt lighter, freer, and ready to embrace whatever came next. Sometimes life hurls devastating curveballs that force you to reevaluate everything, but in the end, those challenges, if embraced, can lead to something far better. My story didn't end with betrayal. It ended with a fresh start, and for that I am eternally grateful. Ladies and gentlemen, since you've listened to the end of this story, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments which state you're watching from. Let's see what percentage of elite viewers make it to the end. And please kindly turn your attention to the screen after this message. There you'll find a full playlist of thrilling stories, a subscribe button for the channel, and our most captivating story. Click, enjoy, and thank you.